Alright, ladies and gentlemen, I thought since we're waiting on some updates for The Batman Part 2 from Matt Reeves, and yes, Mr. Matt Reeves, I'm looking at you, saying can't wait to share lots of exciting things about the movie with you in the weeks and months to come. It's been around 3.5 weeks as of when I'm making this video. I'm waiting patiently. Patiently, of course. So I thought, okay, let's talk about something in the meantime that I'm really, as in really curious about, but yet also wouldn't be overshadowed by any possible news that Matt Reeves could drop for Part 2 any day or week now. Something else that is just not only exciting to me when getting into the thick of it, but also something that is actually being actively explored behind the scenes. And that is where things can go with the continued story of Matt Reeves' epic crime saga. How this can tie into the story for the Penguin Season 2, and how the Batman Part 2's potential plot and new characters can pave the way for the next chapter of that story. So very much so, some theory crafting here, some stuff that I absolutely would love you Gothamites getting involved with in the comments down below. Also, if you happen to be brand new here and you love Batman, Reeves' Batverse, news updates, the lot, consider subscribing because you're absolutely in the right place. So, right now, we know that they're working on the idea of the Penguin Season 2. It's all being put out there as something that isn't a sure thing. And yeah, technically, it isn't. And even though Matt Reeves right now is absolutely tunnel vision focused on the Batman Part 2, which is just something crazy to say, like right now, they're very much so into the thick of pre-production for Part 2. We know that LeFranc is cooking behind the scenes to try and see if there is something to be explored in the future with the Penguin, or even other spin-off shows. And I've seen a bunch of people who say, like, when it comes to the Penguin, there isn't anything, they shouldn't do it. But to me, I think there absolutely is a concept that I can see worth exploring. So I guess I want to start with what Colin Farrell said not too long ago. We know that he's read the script for Part 2, even recently commenting to Variety saying, and my perspective is that it's a work of contemporary genre brilliance. It really is. This film, like the first one, works on multiple levels, both as pure entertainment and as an investigation into the psychology of the characters of Bruce Wayne and Batman. It's really, really moving. I found myself very emotionally moved while I was reading it. Now, yeah, that gets me all kinds of levels of excited to the point of where I could tangent for the next hour and a half if I didn't hold myself back here. But Colin Farrell's also stated that I've got an even smaller role in this one. And I think that's understandable. We can't forget how the Batman Part 2 is, at the end of the day, a story about Robert Pattinson's Bruce Wayne and Batman. It's going to be exploring a whole new Rogues Gallery villain. It will highlight more Bruce Wayne and delve even into his past, which again, very exciting stuff there with what you could speculate about. So you can, probably only really pepper in the character of the Penguin in the Batman Part 2 to just, help flesh out the new status quo of Gotham City after the Riddler's floods, and obviously after Oz Cobb coming into the status of kingpin of the criminal underbelly. So even though the Penguin's role appears to be smaller than even his scenes in the first film, I still think what Part 2 may introduce and flesh out with where we last left Oz, I think it may nicely set up what could be explored in a possible Season 2, or whatever comes after the Batman Part 2 if we're lucky enough to get something that bridges the gap between Part 2 and a possible Part 3. So it's needless to say that there's the obvious obstacle for Oz, where we had Lauren LeFranc say to Entertainment Weekly after the series ended that finally the showrunner knew that she wanted the bat signal to appear at the very end to launch into Matt's second film, she continues. I very much liked the idea of Batman undercutting the strange, delusional scenario that Oz created for himself at the end to merit all of his previous actions and to say, I finally made it, and then for us to say, maybe not, maybe you haven't. And that's like Well, yeah, Oz has risen in power to mirror his typical comic book kingpin counterpart, and Batman will always be this obstacle in his way. But I think we can all agree here that it's extremely unlikely that Batman himself would be the main obstacle for Oz in this possible season 2. Sure, we could see Batman appear in season 2, unlike season 1, as they admitted that they toyed with ideas like Batman appearing before Vic, but ultimately they decided not to do it, as we know, much to some fans' displeasure. But in a season 2, they might just take a stab at that, which would be great to see. But for now, I'm just going to kind of park that idea at, yeah, if we get a season 2, I can imagine they'll try and work Robert Pattinson in as Bruce Wayne or Batman at some point, because I do always feel like there's a relevant way to do so. But again, it's not like he's going to be Oz's biggest obstacle in a continuation of the Penguin story. So you may wonder, like getting to the meat of this now, well, who would be the antagonist to Oz in a whole new season or just a whole new continuance of this story if it's not the Batman himself? Who would stand up to the new kingpin of Gotham, who's trying to worm his way into even more levels of power with his connections to Councilman Haiti and to the end goal of City Hall? Well, this is where my biggest pitch, if you will, comes in, and that is the new district attorney, Harvey Dent. But to understand the pitch for Harvey Dent opposing Oz Cobb in season 2, or maybe again another spin-off show, because we can't forget about that, there could be other shows, maybe even a Harvey Dent thing where you could see Penguin in it. But before I tangent too much about that, we need to remind ourselves of the seeds of the story that sets up this kind of idea to actually be something that is possible. So during the Penguin series, where we saw Oz climb all the way to the top to become the new kingpin of Gotham, along the way in his struggles, the show did introduce the fact that Gotham City, as we kind of already know, isn't just embedded with corruption and crime in the ways you would typically think, whether that be, drugs and gangs, even the GCPD and other areas, but also those who hold power in Gotham's institutions. As Oz puts it, the big-time City Hall people sitting in some fancy private club, drinking orange wine and making crooked deals to benefit themselves. And he even goes as far to say that together, those soft-belly pricks run the whole city. And then there's the line,
"Why the hell not us?"
But the idea and the seeds of this story were carved out even more in the finale of The Penguin, where Oz actually met with Councilman Haiti at City Hall. And this, by far for me, is the single most important aspect of this all when it comes to where Oz's insatiable desire for power can continue in the future. In that room in City Hall, Councilman Haiti initially couldn't really stand the idea of having to talk to Oz, let alone just observing this boldness of him walking in there and demanding this conversation. He didn't want to be seen with him, but things quickly take a turn as the conversation continues, just going to show how wearing a suit and being a councilman at City Hall is really just another way of being a crook. So it all really comes down to the whole, if you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. And Oz, being the wheeler dealer that he is, sets Councilman Haiti up to be in quite a good position for all of the fallout that's happened with the gang wars that is going to get people blaming those at City Hall. But ultimately, in exchange for this opportunity for Councilman Haiti to give the people of Gotham someone to hate and someone to love, himself obviously, coming to the point here, in return, Oz has one simple ask.
Might be good to feel welcome in a place like this for a change.
Meet some of those friends you've got, and then boom, the sinister music literally storms into the scene at that moment. The Penguin here, it's all quite mad really, all while about to ascend into the crown of kingpin status of the criminal underworld of Gotham, is at the very same time grifting another lane of opportunity to worm his way into the very pillars of Gotham that's supposed to uplift it. So this is where it ties into the beginning of The Batman Part 2, since as the final moments of this conversation continue, we see Councilman Haiti somewhat succumb to this temptation, and he very transparently warns Oz,
"You're gonna have some trouble. Reál, she's forming a commission, anti-corruption.
Who are going after cops and city officials, and they have a list of Carmine's associates. And Haiti already knows, he makes it very clear in this moment, that they plan to subpoena Oz. And he concludes that if he wants to be welcome in a place like City Hall to meet other corrupt city officials who may facilitate Oz's integration into all of that,
You gotta look clean.
And then, of course, this kind of whole scene at City Hall ends as Oz looks up at Bella Reál. And I don't think anyone can really deny that even though this plot point doesn't exactly play out or continue in a major way for the rest of the season, it's kind of like, well, what does that mean? It's a seed for a story that can be explored further down the line. So overall with this concept, this isn't an unfamiliar thing for the character of the Penguin in the source material or other media even, like when it comes to having political ambitions to cement himself as having this monopoly of power over Gotham City. I mean, he'd control the criminal underworld, but he'd also be embedded into the city system to the point of where even city officials wouldn't cross him. And this is just the beginning of that. But guess what? Apparently, we could actually be seeing the next stepping stone in the beginning of Oz's City Hall ambitions at the start of The Batman Part 2, as Matt Reeves said as follows: Oz does become one of the entry points into the movie. I can't tell you where it goes from there, except to say that we're super excited about it. So that's a brief quote, but it's one that follows along this direction we're discussing here. We already know from other quotes that The Batman Part 2 picks up right after the end of Penguin with the bat signal being lit. And I think given that we know Oz becomes one of the entry points into the movie, it does make me wonder if we could see the very scene in where Oz is subpoenaed. As many of you know, like when you're subpoenaed, especially with the context from Haiti, that it would be from the summons of Bella Reál's anti-corruption commission, it wouldn't be unusual for Oz to have to attend in person to testify and give the chance for him, as Haiti said, to appear clean to those on the anti-corruption commission. Now, Oz, being Oz, will most likely, I think most of us can agree, find a way to appear clean and worm his way out of this, which, for me, lays down the groundwork for Oz's story to be continued in the future. So back to Harvey Dent here. Well, all while he's not guaranteed for the sequel, because as of the time of making this video, the character of Harvey Dent hasn't been announced to even be in the sequel, let alone be cast, but we haven't heard anything at this point. But I think a lot of us are thinking that it's not an outlandish suggestion to say that after, the previous district attorney Gil Coulson's death happened at the hands of the Riddler, that this leaves the position to be filled by the character of Harvey Dent. Sure, they could fill it with somebody else, but it just seems like, you could do Harvey Dent. He's right there. And to me, it just makes perfect sense for that character to be utilized regardless, even outside of the prospects of the Penguin Season 2 for just a moment here, and just considering the very real elements of story for the Batman Part 2, where Matt Reeves has said that it will just dive into this deeper corruption. So we know that Bella Reál has started this anti-corruption commission, who are literally going after corrupt city officials. Like, she wants a clean house. And, you can't blame her, right? And she'll want to fill in the vacant positions with those she can trust. Harvey Dent, especially before Two-Face, as many of you are aware with the character, would also share this desire to be very gung-ho about fulfilling this mission of Bella Reál's. And I think it would be great for Oz to worm his way out of this subpoena all spring clean, and this would be very frustrating for those who just know that he's getting away with it. And this could just be a seed and an itch that Harvey Dent would not be willing to leave go unscratched, which could indeed set him up to be Oz's antagonist, if you will, for a Penguin Season 2. So you can see how there's going to be this entry point, as Matt Reeves said with Oz. We can get new castings for Harvey Dent, which just, again, makes sense to me. And I think it's safe to say that Bella Reál will be in the sequel more, but it still remains to be seen how much of that will really play a role in Bruce Wayne and the Batman's journey in the Batman Part 2, because, after all, it can be continued, but the movie is still going to mostly serve a new story for the Batman himself in the sequel. But in terms of it actually being fleshed out more in general, well, yeah, if Oz gets away clean as a whistle from this anti-corruption effort, then he's just going to spread like a cancer at City Hall. He'll be meeting more people through Councilman Haiti. He'll worm his way into more city officials' pockets and have them wrapped around his finger before they even realize it, just like he achieved with Haiti. And before you know it, he could be in a more powerful position than ever by ruling both the criminal underbelly of Gotham, but also have a large foothold on the opposite side. So when it comes to talking about Harvey Dent, more specifically here, I've always said that even if Matt Reeves does introduce his character in the Batman Part 2, I actually don't expect him to become Two-Face in the movie, which would essentially be a bit of a retread of Nolan's The Dark Knight. I think it'd be best to have him just kind of fill the vacant DA position, place him nicely in a very relevant role for what's happening next with Bella Reál's plans, perhaps pepper him in scenes that explore that a bit more throughout the movie, just showing how this new DA isn't messing around. You could even have news reports like that. But if we got a new season of The Penguin, absolutely that could continue in full force, to the point of where I just don't know how Lauren LeFranc wouldn't have considered all of this in the early stages that they're currently in of the whole process of figuring out if they can do a Penguin season 2 that, fulfills this high standard that they want to reach, or as she said herself, other spin-offs that they're looking into, which again, there's an opportunity for that, which I want to get into in just a second. This to me would offer a very, very thrilling second season. You can imagine how messy things would get with Oz vying for even more power. This is in addition to him maintaining his rule on the newfound position he has, which obviously could invite challenges in of itself. It's not going to be all hunky-dory being the new kingpin of Gotham, but then there's this whole other thing that he's striving for. And obviously here, in another 8-episode series of something, whether it's the Penguin season 2 or something else, it could show the downfall of Harvey Dent in a much more drawn out and fleshed out way. So instead of just incorporating that into a 2.5-hour movie, give or take, if we had another season greenlit of 8 50-minute to 1-hour episodes where you see Harvey Dent's conviction of rooting out the rot that Oz is sowing into the legal system, but is increasingly losing himself to the big bad Harv part of himself in his relentless effort to prevent that at all costs. Yeah, I can imagine Harvey Dent losing parts of himself, and on top of all of the things we loved about the Penguin season 1 being incorporated into another bloody mess of season 2, which you could guarantee they can do. There's enough on the plate already that they can cook with there. It could also be a bit of a tragedy that we watch unfold, which could also forge the identity of a new Rogues Gallery villain. Because it's also important to remember how Matt Reeves has said that in his epic crime saga, in this iteration of a Batman universe, the Rogues Gallery are all in their infancy. I mean, after all, the Riddler only just emerged for the first time with that title. Oz wasn't even the Penguin in the first movie, but now he finally is after his series. The unseen Arkham prisoner doesn't even have the title of the Joker yet, but one day Gotham will know him more reputably as the Clown Prince of Crime. I think a Penguin season 2 would not only drive forward Oz's story in new and interesting ways, and in more ways than I can even mention in this video, but it could also show us how Two-Face even came to be. As I always say as well, enough here on the channel, adaptations don't copy and paste. So, I can imagine how things could get to such a point and where Harvey has got under Oz's skin so much that in court, at the most built up part of the season, where maybe a lot rides on this courtroom scene, let's say, for both characters of Harvey and Oz, he maybe hires someone to throw acid in his face, and it leads to his disfigurement, especially as we don't have Maroni around anymore. This could be finale levels of build-up. And I know the more I'm kind of going on about this here. A lot needs to be fleshed out, and it's starting to sound more like fan goggles are being worn here, spewing all kinds of ideas without really thinking about it a ton. But the concept, I think, is pretty rock sturdy, and all of this would be years and years away, of course. Like, we don't have the Batman Part 2 until October 2027. And then any reality of a Penguin Season 2 or another spin-off show coming to fruition would likely be releasing well beyond that, maybe to bridge the gap between Part 2 and Part 3. Hopefully, if we get a Part 3. Now, trust me, I know I'm quite biased to this idea, but it is truly something that I believe could be another thrilling season of the Penguin that just overall continues and lives up to the roots of what is called, and what Matt Reeves calls, the epic crime saga, continuing a journey of a character who could be cast in Part 2 to be a very real and very formidable threat to Oz Cobb's ambitions in the future of the Batverse, which, by the way, the show literally set up in the first season. Like, they didn't shy away from Oz's City Hall ambitions in any way, and to me, they made it very, very clear. And I do want to highlight that there is another angle they can do this in, which I've briefly mentioned across this video when Lauren LeFranc was asked, as far as other spin-off series related to the Batman, she said, "We're in the early stages," says LeFranc. So that is not just the Penguin, but other spin-off stuff. So if Harvey Dent was introduced in the Batman Part 2 and fulfills a decent supporting role but doesn't become Two-Face, they could actually do a new spin-off, like the Penguin, but surrounding Harvey Dent. And as you've probably guessed, you still implement most of these similar ideas into that show. You could have Penguin be very much so a part of it in all the ways we've discussed, but the series instead rather rests very much so on a character-driven story from Harvey Dent's perspective and struggles as he navigates his way through all of this. Perhaps the whole legal procedural concept entwined in all of this. And again, Oz is just Harvey's antagonist here, for it to still end in a similar way. But I could ramble about this forever, but that's everything I wanted to dig into when it comes to this. So yes, I'd like, especially if you've made it this far, I would love to hear what you think of this down in the comments below. Any ideas you have, anything you can expand on. There is a ton of potential, especially when considering how successful the Penguin series was, the awards that were won here. Like, obviously, like, when it comes to business, they're not going to just want to abandon. I'm not saying just for the sake of money you make a season 2, but they're going to, whether it's the Penguin season 2 or another spin-off entirely, they are absolutely going to be mining that ore vein. And for the time being, they're just going to be like, okay, you know, we're looking into it. But behind the scenes, they're going to be trying to put pen to paper. But obviously, it shouldn't be rushed. And it doesn't have to be rushed. This could be quite a long, long way away. But I'm willing to be patient for something that could rival the Penguin series, whether that's a season 2, but also something else entirely. And if you enjoyed the video, I would greatly appreciate you hitting the like button. Consider hitting the hype button if you have it available in your location. Obviously, consider subscribing for more Batman videos like this. Sometimes there's bonus videos like this, but obviously I'm itching to do some news videos when the time comes, so make sure you don't miss out on that. But other than that, ladies and gentlemen, just thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you fellow Gothamites in the next video. Goodbye.